Hello and welcome to a new video. In this one we won't go into OpenStreetMap and map there, but instead we're going to create a map on UMap. And the map we're going to create is a map of provenance. So if you have a heritage center or a little country museum or something like that, or for a transition year project, you can make a map of where all the artifacts in your collection come from. Not all the artifacts, but your choice of artifacts. So I've made one for some of the artifacts in Roth House, and you see they're coming from all over the place. And when I click on one of those, it displays a name, the acquisition number, a description, which I haven't filled in, a date, the material, the category, and a photograph, the donor, the current location, the literature that is available about them, and a photo attribution, because we're going to use Wikimedia images. You can do this in a team. You don't have to do it on your own. So you could have someone taking all your photographs if you don't have photographs available on Wikicommons or somewhere already. So if you have someone who's in a photography club in your little heritage group, or someone who's just interested in photographs, you can have someone like that in your team. And then you have someone who knows a bit about spreadsheets, for example, because we're going to use spreadsheets, one spreadsheet. And then you have to have one person with internet access, but you don't necessarily all have to have it. That's why it's good to do it in a team. But of course you can do it all in one person, like I did. So the first thing you have to do is you choose your artifacts. And because we're going to put them on a map with their original find location, you can only choose ones where you know the original find location. Sometimes especially in smaller museums, in smaller country museums, you might not know where they came from because somebody just donated the artifact and it's just not known where they were found exactly. Or sometimes things, like for example, in Roth House, a lot of the coins were bought in auction. So the provenance there is auction, which is not useful because you don't know where they were found originally. But this is just what's going to happen in smaller museums and that didn't have a professional curator for a long time. So this is the situation in Ireland, and that's what you have to deal with. So you have to choose artifacts where you know where the artifacts came from. So I chose a list of 12 of different materials, of different time periods, and so on. So what you need then, the person who knows how to use spreadsheets gets their spreadsheet, and you can use Microsoft Word, or you can use the OpenOffice version, or you can use Google Sheets. But of course, then you need internet access if you want to use Google Sheets. And you also need a Gmail address. But I will use the OpenOffice version, which is called Calc for calculator, I presume. And you only need one sheet for it. And the first two columns are going to be the longitude and latitude. So you can just type in long and lat, or the whole thing, longitude and latitude. And then the first person readable column is going to be a name. So that's where you put in the name of your artifacts or the title of your artifact. And then we have a description. And let's just go with the list first. So these are my artifacts, a shield and a gig, a coat of arms, a giant deer head, and so on. All kinds of different things. And if you have a catalog in your little heritage group or in your museum, you can take most of this information from there. If you don't, then you'll have to find it in the literature, and hopefully someone has published something about these artifacts. So then the next, if I've shown you on the map, I'll go back to the map. So we have the acquisition number, and it's very important in your spreadsheet that you only use one word in your header. So I'm not going to put down acquisition number because that's 2 words. I'll put down reference. And then you saw that we have a donor. And what else? The material, the date, a category, and it doesn't really matter in which order you have them in your spreadsheet, as long as you have it somewhat organized and you don't get confused. And then, of course, the photograph and the attribution. So these are the columns that you need on your spreadsheet, and you don't have to have all of them. That depends entirely on what you want from your map, what you want displayed. Literature is something I forgot, literature. And before we go any further, we're going to save this, and it's very important to not save it as the default file type that your program comes in, but to use it as a CSV file, which is a character separated values file. Sounds super complicated, but it's one of the options that it'll give you. And also it's very important to remember where you saved it on your computer. So you go to File, Save As, and that opens a dialog here, and you give it a name, for example, provenance or exhibition or whatever you want to call it. So I'll call it provenance. I have to call it provenance 1 because I already have one called that. So in OpenOffice, the default file extension is ODS, but do not use that. You have to go down to text CSV and then click save. Then it asks you, and it probably does that in Microsoft Excel as well, which the field delimiter, and that's comma. So that's what you're using. And just hit OK. And then it might tell you, or it might not tell you, that only the active sheet was saved, because in a CSV file it can't save the whole document. It'll just save the one sheet. And when you open it up, at least it's in OpenOffice, it's that way. It opens up 3 sheets, but you're not going to use sheet 2 and 3. So that is saved now, and every time you save it again, it'll save it as a CSV automatically. Should be anyway. So then we want to find the locations. So we go to OpenStreetMap. You can use Google Maps as well, but obviously I'm not going to recommend that. So openstreetmap.org. The Sheila gig that is in Rothaus comes from a townland called Collaghmore, which is south of Callan somewhere. Callan is here. So it's from a little graveyard down here. And it was found in the graveyard. It is believed not to be the original location. It's believed to have come from Kyle, but this is the last location it was found in before it was donated to the Kilkenny Archaeological Society. So this is what I'm going to use. So I don't know exactly where in the graveyard, so I'm just gonna click in the center of the graveyard, right click on my mouse, and then one of the options it gives you is show address, and you click on that, and it'll display the GPS coordinates in the search field, but also down here. So you just copy each one of them and paste them in longitude and latitude. And I do hope that I didn't get them confused. But we will see that later on if I did. And then the next one, the coat of arms. So the Archdeacon coat of arms came from one of those merchant mansions in Kilkenny. Funnily enough, not in Hightown. So Hightown was the part of Kilkenny that was settled by the Anglo-Normans, and they started settling in this area here. And then later on they bought some land from the church, the Bishop of Ossory, and extended their Hightown or English town down to the River Brega. And that was where the English or the Anglo-Normans lived, and the Irish people lived down here around St. Canice's Cathedral in Irishtown. Funnily enough, the Archdeacon mansion was in Irishtown, And Dean Street was widened in the, I think, 1960s or 70s. So all these houses here are post that time. And I know it was the corner house, but I won't click into the corner house here because that's not the original location, but I'll click somewhere here a bit closer to St. Canice's Cathedral. And same again, right click, show address, and copy and paste that. And it's very important to not forget the minus. I will forget it now just to show you what happens later on. And I won't go through all of them with you because you'll be bored stiff. Maybe just some. Let's say the Tudor button that was found. It was found in the River Nore by Jay Lenihan. And I'm fairly sure that's Jimmy Lenihan, the Thatcher / archaeologist, because he's an underwater archaeologist. I asked him, and he's not quite sure if he found it or his brother Dan, but one of the Lenihans anyway. And I don't know exactly where in the River Nore they found it. I think there were some excavations down near Johnsbridge, so that's what I put down as the location. So, but I can't get the location of the UMap. I have to go to openstreetmap.org and click here and get these coordinates. And then, of course, I have to put them with the Tudor button and not with the next one in the next row. So this is how you get the coordinates. And then, of course, you have to save again. Just save more often than necessary, maybe in case, something comes up and, I don't know, you get a phone call and somebody closes your window or something like that. So this is how you do that. And I'll just fill in the rest and then you can join me again when we import it into the UMap for the first time. So of course I did confuse latitude and longitude. A lot of people who map make that mistake. So I've just changed the headers around from long lat to lat long. And I've saved it again. And now we're going to UMap. So it's umap.openstreetmap.fr because it's hosted in France. And if you're not fluent in French and you want the user interface to be in English, you just have to add /en, or it might just do that automatically depending on your browser settings. And then I'll just log out because I'm already logged in to show you. You need to log in. So at the very top there you see it says log in, sign in. And if you click on that, it gives you 4 options to use. GitHub, which I presume most of you are not on. I'm not. Bitbucket, Twitter, that might be dying out soon, and OpenStreetMap. So I use my OpenStreetMap account for this, and you just click on the icon for OpenStreetMap. And it will ask you to authorize access to your account, and you click yes, and that closes that tab and redirects you to UMap, and you're now signed in. And where it said sign in before, it says my maps and then your username. And because you're not be unicycling, it will say something else there. And then you want to create a map. So there's a button there that says create a map, and you click on that. And it jumps to this view usually, and you might be able to tell that this is all in French, because as I said, the UMap website is hosted in France. So everything is in French there, but don't worry. You can change it to English. So on the right-hand side, we have a menu, and it's number 6 from the top. It says change tile layers. And there you can see that OSMFR is activated, has a little tick here. And you can change it to the standard view of OpenStreetMap, but you can also choose from a variety of different styles. And I sometimes, because I don't want too much detail on it, I often choose this one here. But there are more. There's a dark one as well. Depends entirely on what you're trying to achieve or what you want to show. If you have a cycling related exhibition coming up, or if you want to appeal to cyclists, there are several cycling layers that show all the mapped cycling routes in your area, and other amenities for cyclists. So you have the OSM Open Cycle Map and CycleAwesome. But I'm not going with those. I'm going back to this one. And then you zoom in roughly on the area that you want displayed. And at the top left, it says Untitled Map. And maybe you want to give your map a name. And you might want to call it Provenance. And I'll call it Provenance Rothaus, because that's what the museum is. And then you can give it a description as well. I'll leave that empty for now, and I will save that. So this is just an empty map now, no use to anyone. So what you want to do is import your data that you have collected in your CSV file into this. Might sound a bit scary, but it's not. So the fourth button from the top is this arrow up, and it says Import Data. So you click on that, and that opens the menu, the Import menu. And there's a Browse button, and if you've ever uploaded anything in the 1990s or 2000s to the internet, you might be familiar with this concept. They look a bit different now, mostly, but this is what they look like. So you click on Browse, and you go to the file that your CSV file is in, and you choose your CSV file, and click on Open. And then you probably didn't notice that, but here where it says choose the format of the data to import, it jumped automatically to CSV, because there are different file formats that you can import, but for our use, the CSV file is the one we want. So it jumps automatically to that, and then you get a choice of importing it into layer 1, which is our only layer so far. So we won't change anything about that. And because we haven't imported anything else before, we don't have to tick the replace layer content. Instead, we can just click on Import. And you see how it jumped away from the zoom level and the central location that we had set. And that is because I had not put in the minus in one of the coordinates. So if I zoom out further, you see that it has put it somewhere in Germany, because of course this is east of Greenwich, and all our data should be west of Greenwich. So rather than just taking this and moving it to where it belongs, because you might not know exactly, you just go back to your CSV file, find the culprit where it doesn't have a minus, add the minus, save the whole thing again, and then go back to your import layer. So with your upload button here, import data, just repeat everything we've done before. But this time, of course, we want to replace the layer content because we don't want this marker to be in the wrong location. So we tick that box and we hit import. And now it has jumped centrally to, it finds the center of all these nodes. And then it's probably a good idea to save. And you just press that button. And if you want to click on any of these just to see what they show, you have to disable editing. And then you can just hit them, and it just has the name displayed for now, which is all we have added so far anyway. But that has worked. So you have all the locations. You can zoom in and check out where we put them, so you remember that I put that location there, so that worked, obviously. Next, we want to flesh it out a bit. We don't want just the name on it. That is boring. You know, that's not really very interesting and educational. So we want to add more data to our little map. And we use our spreadsheet for that. And I don't want to bore you with how to add all the data. So I'm just going to copy and paste what I have already prepared. And then we will go and import that data into the map and continue from there. So now I've filled in most of the fields in the table. I don't have information about all of them, so I can't fill them all in. And it's only an example anyway. So I've saved that as well, just overwritten my CSV file. and we're going back to UMap, into the import, browse, choose our file, and replace the layer content, which again is very important. It doesn't look different for now. We'll save this. It'll just jump out again, finding the center of our view. Save that and disable editing. If you click on any of the random things there, you now see that it has the name and the description. And you might be wondering, we have all this other data uploaded. Where's that gone? Well, it's not vanished. It's just that we have to define this window here. We have to tell the window what to display and where to display it. And that might sound all a bit complicated now, but bear with me. So we go into the editing mode again by clicking on the big pencil here in the top right corner, and then into the manage data layers or manage layers, which looks a bit like a barrel. That opens this window or this menu, and then we have a couple of tiny icons up there, and we're going to the one that says edit. It's a small pencil. And then we go to interaction options. You could also rename the layer here, but we won't do that. So we go to interaction options, and the third from the top is called pop-up content template. So that's what we're going to define as the template. And if you click on define, it opens the window. And you can see here that it has a hashtag. The proper name is Octothorpe. It's not actually called hashtag. It's called an Octothorpe. And then we have wavy brackets and name. And then in the next line, we have wavy brackets with description. So these are the two things that are being displayed so far. But we want all the other things displayed. And there is a way to format this text. And if you click on the little question mark here, it'll open this window, and this will explain all the types of things you can define. So let's say after name and description, which is a good order, I suppose, to have it in. Next, we want maybe the material. So we go into a new line, and the wavy brackets are, it's explained here, use placeholders, so they're placeholders, which with feature properties between brackets, e.g. Wavy bracket name, they will be dynamically replaced by corresponding values. That sounds super complicated, but all that means is that whatever you put in the wavy brackets there, the wavy brackets won't be displayed when you click on it. Can't open that now because I have to save and disable editing, but it will replace it with the corresponding thing that you find under the location. So we have name here, that's why we only use one word definitions, and they're all in small and they're all in lowercase. So it'll replace everything that we have in name, in the name column, and it will replace everything that we have in the description column. And what you could also, you could even do whole sentences. I've done that in other UMaps. Let's say you could have, let's say this name is made of, and then you do the wavy brackets and you put material and spell it the same way that you have it in your table, otherwise it won't work. So it should display the name then, so the whatever is made of whatever material we have defined here. I'll show you how that works. I wouldn't do it that way, I'm just telling you that that's something you could do. So now you see that the bronze needle is made of bronze. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Let's click on this one here. The Castle Inch jug is made of clay. So that's kind of cool, I think. But that's not what I want to do. Go back into interaction options and delete that. And you see it didn't make the name bold or as a heading because I wrote something before the Octothorpe, and it only works if the Octothorpe is the first thing in the line. So description, let's say material, wavy brackets, material after that, and after that we'll have the date, and then the category, and then maybe we want an empty line, and we put the donor next. And let's say we want the donor to be displayed in italics, and italics are done with an asterisk before and after the line. They call it a simple star, but it's actually called an asterisk. So we have it like that. And this will only display everything in the table. There won't be any labels. I'll show you what I mean. So we save this and disable editing again. And click on the Castle Inchjug location again. And you see now that it has the name again as a heading. The description, discovered, blah, 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 discovered. Then we have the material, then the date, and then the category. But if you have it like that, people might not know, where one entry ends and the next one starts and what they all mean. So they don't know, was it found in the 13th or early 14th century? Obviously not, but maybe you want to put labels on them. So we go back into the interaction options, and maybe we want also another break after the description because it's all a bit bulky. So we add an empty line, and then you can also make this bigger by pulling down here. And then maybe we want to write material before where the material is displayed, and date and category. My microphone is a bit in the way, I can't see what I'm typing. Category and the donor. And we want the label as well as the name of the donor in italics, so you have to squeeze it in there. What else do we have? Material, date, category, location. So maybe we want the location next, and location in museum, so you can use more than one word now. And then wavy brackets and location. And then maybe the reference in the museum. So I said before it's called an acquisition number, but I didn't want to use two words, but now I can do that if I can spell acquisition number. And wavy reference. And maybe somewhere down here we want literature. So if someone has written about this artifact, you can add literature there. Will I ever learn to use wavy brackets? Literature. And we'll save that for now. Disable editing. And click on the Castle Inchjug again. So this looks a bit more tidy, I think. So we have the name, a short description, the material, date, category, the donor. I have to research that again. The location in the museum is the Phelan Room, and the acquisition number is also the Phelan Room, which is of course rubbish. Where is my reference? Castle Inchjug. But that's the thing, you can just go back into the spreadsheet and find your mistakes and correct them. You don't have to go into the spreadsheet, but decide on a method. Don't mix them up, because you can change it on UMap, but you also have to update your spreadsheet in case later on you upload your spreadsheet, you import your spreadsheet data, and then it will import the older version of it, and you don't want that. So I would always update the spreadsheet and then import that again. Sorry, there's a fly, really annoying. Because some things went wrong here with the import. Yeah, I'll save that again and just import again. Maybe you want to know what's up here, because you might be wondering, what the hell is up there near Dublin? So it's a bronze axe head that was found in County, what's that? Meath? But it seems to work. maybe you don't like the markers, the way they look. You can change that. You can have almost any color you want, and you can have different shapes. So we're going into the editing mode by clicking on the pencil, and then you can change every individual marker if you want, but if you want to change them globally, you go back into the manage layers and into the editing mode for the layer and to shape properties. Click on that, and the first one that comes up is a color. And if you click on that, you get a good bit of a choice for colors. So I'm going with this forest green, and that changes it automatically, all of them. You could also change the color, like depending on the category or the date or whatever. That's completely up to you. You can also change the icon shape. There's 4 different types. So this is the default. You can have a circle, which is just a little dot. It might be too small. You can have a drop like this, like you get a lot of these kinds of markers on all kinds of maps, or you can have a pin. Completely up to you. If you're using the default or the drop, you can also choose an icon symbol. So there are a couple of symbols that are predefined. None of them are really very useful for historic artifacts. But you might have a different opinion about that. And they all come in black or, well, dark grey and in white. So maybe you want this. You could also make your own marker symbol and upload that, but that's probably going a bit too far. I'm going to go with this one now and leave it at that. And you can also save that then. If you wanted to change an individual marker, let's say you don't want the ones in County Carlow to look the same, maybe you want them in a different color, you have to be in the editing mode, go on to click on the marker and then on the little pencil that comes with the marker, and you see we have all the data down here, so you could even add data here as well. But as I said, I wouldn't do it that way. I would go with the spreadsheet. And down here is the same shape properties, and you have the color. So you could change that to this kind of brown. And you could also change the icon shape. I don't want to do that, but that is entirely possible. And save that for now. And that is pretty good already. In the second part, we're going to tackle the photographs because we've neglected them so far, and it's always nice to have a bit, more photographs to make people know what they're looking at, I suppose. It depends entirely how you're using this map. But here's an example, for example, that where we have a description and we have everything filled in. We have the donor, Michael Lanigan, who was actually the boy he was then a boy in the 80s. Was 10 years old, and in his summer holidays he found this bronze palstaff, and we have an acquisition number and we have literature about it. Ellen Prendergast was an archaeologist, one of the first female archaeologists in County Kilkenny, and she published quite a bit in the Old Kilkenny Review. So I hope you're enjoying it so far, and I hope you're brave enough to watch the second part, which will look into all the photographs. Thanks for watching so far, and I'll see you hopefully in the next one. Slán!